Okay. Good morning, everyone. John chapter 11. We have another great text. We're joined together at the text. Chapter 11. Anybody recall what chapter 10 was all about? You got it. Yep, you got it. And that's it helps when you guys are gone a couple weeks prior, so that it was very fresh in your mind. And because the rest of us were like, well, I know we talked about the sheep, but so cool.
I've really enjoyed this.
Oh,
So far.
thanks.
I really have.
Awesome.
Hey, what's these things?
So this is a part of like, I think
This is a new style. You gotta wear glasses.
yes, it's to look smart.
There you
To
go.
look smart.
It helps.
Let us read scripture. No, it's just in the 40s now, and last year it started to bother me, and then I got them. It's like I don't know if I really need them, but then my eyes would feel fatigued, and then I feel like now that I wear them more, it's like I almost like have to have them. And so I started reading this morning around 7:30, and I didn't have them. I put them on. It's like, whoa, that's so cool. So
That sounds like Chris Morris when he started wearing it.
yeah,
Oh, I don't need those glasses.
Yeah.
The first thing, oh, man, you got any cheaters around? I can't believe that.
yeah. So it's official. Yeah. So chapter 10 was the whole chapter is about Jesus being the shepherd, and we want to remember that. We want to remember that this is kind of new for those disciples, and in a new way. Like when we read these texts, it's really helpful for us to think about being those disciples, being those people. And so today, there's a few people I want you to pretend that you are. One is, of course, Lazarus, but that would be the easy one. You get sick and you die. But then pretend you're Mary or Martha, and we know the caricatures of Mary and Martha. I'm having trouble with this camera, like it's right in the way of Betty, and so I feel like Betty's going to let me have it if I don't move the camera. No, it's actually distracting, so I think it's like messing with my eyes. So, sorry, YouTube folk, you're off to the side. So Martha is how would you describe Martha?
Oh, she was like the homebody. She was the organizer.
Always doing something.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Mary's the what?
Oh, I don't know. Content to hear the story.
Content to hear.
Listener.
Listener. Yeah. Processor, thinker. Not to say Martha's not, but it's truly that the duet. I was thinking of a word for two people. The duet of Mary and Martha might be one of the best duets in the scriptures, right? Maybe. Welcome. Who are other duets in the scriptures? People that go well together.
Adam and Eve.
There you go. I'll take that. Adam and Eve. Moses and Aaron. Nice. Yeah. You think of other duets, couples, not just who? You got it. Yeah. So definitely all the married couples, but then like Moses and Aaron, siblings. We got disciples. That's a little more complex. Cain and Abel. What? Ruth and her daughter. Yeah. Yeah, but the dichotomy of Mary and Martha is maybe
Oh, yeah.
the strongest of all the duets, but I don't know if that's the correct term, duet, but you get the idea.
Hear the most about it.
Yeah. So let's say something tragic happens, and you're Martha. What does a Martha type do in the face of tragicness?
Tries to fix it.
Fix it,
Help them.
help, maybe even busy herself. Like what does Martha do in the sense of denial? You know, that happens in the stage.
Stop cooking
Yeah, like this isn't happening. Maybe start cooking, start cleaning, I mean, this is all speculation. What would Mary do? You think the ponderer? She might what?
Think about Lazarus and what he meant to her.
Grieve. Yeah, think about Lazarus. Think about, and more than think about, maybe actually break down. Did you say break down or pray? Yeah, pray. Be emotionally a mess, maybe even sooner. Who knows? Lazarus, of course, he dies. So, but we could be, to be fair, he experiences death. Like he breathes his last breath, and we don't know if he remembers that, but the figure I really want us to think about today before we get into the text is Jesus. Because I think we're so used to seeing Jesus as God and the miracle worker that we just are like, yeah, he's going to wait a couple days, he's going to tick off Mary and Martha and the disciples are but at the end of the day, he's going to bring Lazarus back to life.
But doesn't that prove how, when he talks about how he grieved for his friend, Jesus can't?
Yes, we'll get to that, but and that's an excellent point, and that's a point that I think highlights this chapter for a few reasons. A, it's like the shortest verse in all of Scripture. Secondly, more so, it is just the motion that Jesus carries with his fellow human being. But let's put it this way: when Jesus finds out that Lazarus is dying, a lot of times I think we picture Jesus kind of, this is the plan, like he was born with the plan, like on December 1st, I will wake up, wear my glasses to Bible study. Butch will ask me, what are those on? You know what I mean? Like, we picture Jesus knowing exactly what is all going to play out. But I don't know. But there's a lot of other things going on. Jesus has been up to miracle work. He's been up to parables. He's been up to something. Does he know exactly how it's going to play out? I don't know. Why would he be cautious going closer to Jerusalem?
Because
They're looking for him. Yeah.
they want to find him.
They want to throw stones at him, right? We've had that. That was end of chapter 9. They wanted to stone the woman, right? At the beginning of chapter 9, they want to stone him at the end of chapter 9. If you think about how this text keeps unpacking itself, it's wonderful. What does Jesus do when he finds out Lazarus is near death? John tells us he waits a couple days, right? What's he do during those 2 days? Finish up the laundry?
Probably praise.
He's praying. Yeah. What's he praying? So if he knows everything is how it's going to play out, what's he praying? Like literally what is he praying?
Probably praying that by what is going to take place, it will strengthen the faith of Martha and Mary and Lazarus.
Yeah.
And the disciples, or anybody that was around.
Yeah. Great. But work with me, and we'll get to that. But let's just pretend he knows everything, which he does. He's God there's an it's complicated. But if he knows everything, does he really need to pray? Or is he not aware of completely everything, how it's going to play out? And so he's praying to the Father, and then to kind of bring to Irma's thoughts, or come to Irma's thoughts, that he's praying for what's about to happen as he gets closer to Jerusalem, kind of the next step, as he knows that he will probably face death at one point. Does he know exactly how it's going to happen? Is he praying that what happens to a body when it dies? It starts to decay, right? Does he pray that Lazarus's body will not decay so far that he, you know what I mean? I guess what I came out of the text already at this point is realizing that Jesus weeps in verse 35, but he's not just praying, he's, in a sense, he's grieving, he's grievally, with heavy heart, with all emotion, he is praying to the Father, his will be done, unsure of exactly how it's going to play out, realizing. So if Jesus weeps, so in one sense he weeps, and we know Jesus dies on the cross for our sins. Does he at all, if he can have the emotion of weeping, can he have the emotion of sorrow and sadness, or face the?
Would that be the human side of him?
Yeah, or do we? And we say side, and it's so hard. It's like, is there a human side, or is he just both? But that's how we have to talk about it. But yeah, it's not like he can turn it on and off. I think that's what challenges us. But if he weeps, I never believed or have believed that he weeps just to teach us 2,000 years later that he's human. He literally weeps, and what's going on inside of him, and I was just going to say this, like, let's say, remember where you were at age 33, or in your late 20s, early 30s. I don't know if any of you had this, but imagine you had a cancer prognosis that you weren't going to make it, that death was coming. Yeah, I'm pretty darn sure you'd be praying, weeping, wrestling with what this means. And I guess for me, honestly, it's so much that Jesus just goes to the cross, that we just go to the cross where he died, and Easter happens, but in all reality, he had to get there first. And if he has emotion to weep over his dear friend Lazarus, he's going to have other emotions as well, or inner stuff going on. So I guess for me, the text brought out far more humanity than he just wept, but the humanism. And a thing I read was that when little Johnny is really sad, is there an infectiousness of that sadness amongst people that don't know Johnny but are in the same room?
Of course, if you have feelings, you would feel emotions.
Yeah, so I think it is. I think you're right. I think empathy is the path, and I think not everyone has empathy. I guess a few of the psychological disorders that I can't name, they lack that. A lot of times they become serial killers because they have no empathy for anyone else if they go unchecked, if they're raised unchecked. But not to distract us with serial killers, but this empathy thing, and I got distracted by serial killer. Where was I? Help me out. And
How you would feel it would.
oh yeah. So what I read is that sadness is contagious, and I guess it's a psychological thing like that happens with human beings, that when somebody experiences sorrow, our empathy to be with it, even though our sorrow is not the same as that, we are sorrow-filled people, most of us, or we are all sorrow-filled people in a certain different parts of our life. There's things that give each and every one of us sorrow, and they're all different. They may have similarities in theme, but they are different, okay? But when someone is experiencing sorrow, I guess human beings actually are not attracted, but we go to sorrow with them. And that may explain just the whole process of grieving and dying, that, you think about what plays out when somebody dies in a community, and whether it be, Long Prairie or even first century, what's going on with Lazarus, that he's dying. So, some really cool stuff is to come. I won't talk about it now, but we'll just go into this text and just want you to think about, Jesus, Martha, Mary, Lazarus, even the disciples. Maybe, how about you guys just pick one mentally? Who are you going to be? And just tell it to yourself. And at the end, maybe you could share some insights of what you experienced with the person. And don't tell us who you are, because we don't want to know. But you pick one of those figures that I mentioned and hear the text through their ears, and maybe you'll have something to share at the end. So chapter 11, here we go. Now a certain man was ill. Okay, so we left Jesus. He went across to the Jordan because they were trying to kill him, they were trying to stone him. He's across the river now. He got out of Dodge, and many believed in him there. Verse 1, now a certain man was ill, Lazarus of Bethany. Where's Bethany? Not too far from Jerusalem. It's really close. It's like, one of those towns that, it's right next to the Twin Cities. Yeah, so, what's that? Oh yeah, well, Round Prairie to Long Prairie, but your son's in Ham Lake. That's kind of like Ham Lake to the cities. It's close. Huh?
Not Maple. I said it wrong. As you're coming into the city.
Maple Grove?
Maple Grove.
Yeah.
Close suburb.
Yep.
Moving day.
Yeah, but unlike suburbs, this is like country. So, Round Prairie might be better, to be honest. But yeah. Anyway, it's not like a 12-day walk from Jerusalem. It's pretty much, he's pretty close. And it also made me think today about how strategically, maybe not strategically, but coincidentally, or however it happened, Mary and Martha are not they're from Bethany. These are some of Jesus' closest, people, and they're in Bethany, which is very close to Jerusalem, which allows the story to play out the way it did. Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. It was Mary who anointed the Lord with ointment and wiped his feet with her hair. So, when did we hear about this? It was Mary who anointed the Lord with ointment and wiped his feet with her hair. Did we hear about this yet? Have we read this in the text yet? No, we haven't. Actually, it comes out in the next chapter, which is kind of cool what John does. He's saying it was Mary who anointed the Lord with ointment and wiped. So a lot of times it seems like you would actually tell the story of Mary, and then you would use this after the story has been told in the bigger story that you're telling. But John actually does, just a kind of, I think that's how it usually plays out. But anyway, he mentions it was Mary who anointed the Lord with ointment and wiped his feet with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was ill. Now, a couple things. What does Bethany literally mean? I guess I'm told it means literally house of the poor. House of the poor. What does Bethlehem mean? House of bread. Bethlehem, house of bread. City of David, we know, is what it becomes, but it's Lahem, house of bread. Bethany is house of poor, I guess. And so, think about this. What is John got anything going on when he says Lazarus of the town for poor people, the village where Mary and her sister Martha? It was Mary who anointed the Lord with ointment and wiped his. If Mary is from the town of poor people, what does she do with ointment? Or how much is ointment? It's really expensive. So you see, I didn't catch on. I had to read that. I don't know how much but it's interesting to just put it that way. And it was Mary, the person who was very poor. Like, it almost like amplifies what she did when you realize that Bethany was not a ritzy place. So the sisters sent to him, saying, Lord, he whom you love is ill. Lord, he whom you love is ill. But when Jesus heard it, when he heard it, he said, this illness does not lead to death. It is for the glory of God, so that the Son of God may be glorified through it. So, wow.
How it said they sent a message to him that he came 4 days later. How did they get this news that he was ill to Jesus when he didn't come there until like 4 days later?
Well, they're not 4 days apart. I'm not following you, Irma, but I think it's an interesting point. So,
well, he said after he had died, then Jesus came, like I always thought it was somebody said 4 days later.
it's 2
But
days.
Mary sent the message. How did they send the message to him?
Yeah, I don't think.
Does that make
I think
sense?
we're thinking about the other incident where Jesus made the boy well, and maybe at least that's where I'm confused in it. But ultimately, the messenger says he's sick. Ultimately, Jesus doesn't come right away when he's still sick. He doesn't come till after he's died. But the thing I'm kind of drawn to is the fact that he even has a thought. Like, he's thought about this. Like, the illness does not lead to death. Okay, let's say Jesus doesn't know. I don't know if this is fair to do, and we don't want to mess with this too much, but I think we assume that because he's all-knowing that he knows that he's going to die. But what if he doesn't know? And what if it's just the illness does not lead to death, or does he know that it is now his time because he's been praying to the Father that this is where the Father's will play out, but he's like, I don't know how this is going to work, so it is for the glory of God that the Son of God may be glorified through it. Okay, so then with the latter part of it, it makes me think that he's already kind of preconceived an idea that he will be a part of the resurrection of Lazarus. Now, Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So when he heard that Lazarus was ill, So when he heard that Lazarus was ill, he stayed 2 days longer in the place where he was. So we do know he's, across the Jordan. At least that's where we left him, is across the Jordan River, not too far away. But he stayed 2 days longer in the place where he was. Then after this, he said to his disciple, let's go to Judea again. Now remember, what should be going on in your head when Jesus says, let's go to Judea? The alarms should be sounding. The disciples' alarms are sounding. Why? Why should the alarms be going off?
It was dangerous.
Dangerous. The Judeans want to kill Jesus, okay? The disciples said to him, Rabbi, the Jews we're just now seeking to stone you, and you are going there again? Jesus answered, Are there not 12 hours in a day? If anyone walks in the day, he does not stumble because he sees the light of the world. Imagine the disciples hearing that. Like, if anyone walks in the day, he does not stumble because he sees the light of this world. Do they literally, I just realized, literally, walking in the day, you see the light of this world. What is the light of this world literally or physically? The sun. So I guess my best assumption is to say, if anyone walks in the day, he does not stumble because he sees the light of the world. But it's really crazy because John uses light and emphasizes Jesus referring to himself as a light. But if anyone walks in the night, he stumbles because the light is not in him. What? Okay. Not in him. It doesn't say around it, but not in him. After saying these things, he said to them, Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I go to awaken him. Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I go to awaken him. The disciples said to him, Lord, if he has fallen asleep, he will recover. Now Jesus had spoken of his death, but they thought that he was meant taking a rest in sleep. Then Jesus told them plainly, Lazarus has died. And for your sake, I am glad that I was not there, so that you may believe. But let us go to him. So Thomas, called the twin, remember who Thomas is? What's the one word that emphasizes Thomas in our, doubtful, yeah. Doubting, questioning Thomas. So Thomas, called the twin, said to his fellow disciples, what? He says, let's go, or let us also go, that we may die with him. What? I think I've always thought of this text as this is where if you take the verse of Thomas saying, let us also go, that we may die with him, in my mind, it's always Thomas saying regarding him being Jesus outside the context. But here, wouldn't you say the context is let's also go that we may die with Lazarus? Am I right? Yeah. Interesting. Why is loyal Tom saying, I'm willing to go die with him? Because Jesus said plainly, and for your sake I am glad that I was not there so that you may believe. But let us go to him. It's crazy. What's going on in Thomas's head? Verse 17. Now when Jesus came, he found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. There it is, Irma, 4 days. Yeah, Bethany was near Jerusalem, about 2 miles off. There we go. And many of the Jews had come to Martha and Mary to console them concerning their brother. So when Martha heard, so think about how Lazarus isn't, well, I don't know. I wonder how old he really was, but was this like typical for a guy this age to die this way? Who knows? But how do you picture a community like Bethany, not much, being, a poor town, we'll say, a village. How does a village deal with the death of somebody like Lazarus? What do they do? What does it look like?
They all congregate around them.
Probably congregating around this. Do they keep working, or this is first century. This isn't the 40-hour work week. There's no time clocks. I sort of picture people just stop what they're doing and congregate,
They're probably working in the fields or something and wrapping their hoe or whatever they got.
Yeah, so if they're farmers or, doing that, yeah, or the trades that they may have been doing.
People are so concerned for the family.
Yeah. But if you're poor, you probably have very little income, so you might have more time than you have work. The bottom line is that I think there's a lot of people that have gathered, and maybe that's part of the reason this all plays out the way it does, so that a lot of people gather to see what's about to happen. What verse are we on?
If you read 18 over again, and you go down.
Okay,
into
Beth.
19, and many of the Jews came to Martha and Mary to console them
Yep.
concerning their brother.
Yep. So verse 20, so when Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went and met him. What's going on in Martha's mind, you think? Martha doesn't know the whole story. Right? She doesn't know the story. What if you're Martha, what are you going to Jesus for?
She maybe knows that he can save him.
I don't know if she knows that yet, but I mean, it's a great question. But she knows Jesus is special, I think. But Jesus didn't come when she requested him to come, so she might be a little. Yeah. What Betty said. We don't know. I mean, yeah. Think about it. Think about your sibling in your 30s or 40s is near death. You know someone who could be a solution in that instance because they have worked miracles. So let's say it's just a doctor who is a specialist in the particular condition that your sibling has, and you just happen to be friends with them. Like, he loves you and you love him as friend. You have more than just a professional. You are a close friend, and you reach out to that specialist, and the specialist says, it'll be 4 days. I mean, the analogy doesn't quite work whenever you work with Jesus in an analogy, but he doesn't come, and he could have. Yeah. Martha said to Jesus, Lord. What's the next word? Lord. Just the next word is one word, 2 letters. If. Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. You ever been on the receiving end of a statement like that? When I first got here, somebody passed away who was a member here in 1982. I was asked by the family to do the funeral. The person really wasn't connected at any church. They were not members here, but they were born here. I reached out to the church that she had been a part of after 1982 that was in my record and recollection. I even found the pastor who knew the person, and I suggested that I asked if they could handle taking care of a funeral service for this couple, or for this family situation. The person had not married, so there wasn't like a spouse. There weren't children involved, which makes it unique. So I thought I was doing the right thing. I still think I did the right thing, but a few weeks had passed, and I followed up with the family contact, and I said, with a pastoral heart, I went out of my way. I didn't need to do this, but I thought it would be good for me to contact her and follow up. And I did. And with an open pastoral heart, I was prepared to say one thing, and you know what I heard? What I heard, and I know these words because they didn't haunt me, but they hurt. And the words were this: I've never been so hurt in all my life. Basically because I didn't do the funeral. But I've been on the receiving end of things I wasn't prepared to hear, and they stick with you. I've never been hurt in all my life. I can honestly now say That's grief talking. And so when I talk to families amidst grief, I always, from that event, I basically learned that, look, these are tough times when you're grieving the loss of a loved one, and you just don't know what, you want to in all your ways say the right thing, but at the end of the day, a lot of times even our right things are not always great.
Pastor,
Yeah.
I think you learn more by getting hurt than you do by getting patted on the back.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, no, you're absolutely. But we live in a time when nobody wants to get hurt, and we'll do everything we can to cover that up. But yeah, that's a very wise thing to say. We learn more by being hurt. So I think the reason for sharing that is that Martha, I think, is pretty hurt. Who knows? Did Jesus know she was going to come at him that way? Well, at least he has a response that will change the mood of everything. I didn't really have that. That's the same way that he did. But verse 22, but even now I know that whatever you ask from God, God will give you. Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. Martha said to him, what? I know that he'll rise again on the resurrection of the last day. Okay, Jews believe in the resurrection. The only ones that don't really believe in the physical resurrection are Sadducees. Not sure how many. I think it's a smaller percentage. It's not like a 50-50 thing like we think Pharisees and Sadducees. I think there's probably more Pharisees of the Pharisaical, and not, we say Pharisaical as in hypocriticalness, but we'll just say we'll just pretend it's Christianity, and there's Lutherans, there's Catholics, there's Baptists, there's Pharisees, there's Sadducees, and there's Zealots, I think are three big ones, but the Pharisaical branch is probably the most biggest, and they believe in the resurrection of the body. So when Martha says, I do believe in the resurrection of the last day, that is Old Testament faith or doctrine, okay? But it's minus Jesus, okay? Except in this sense, Martha's talking directly to who is the one who will rise from the dead, and who will be there on the last day. So the world is like coming right into the middle of this. I am the resurrection and the life. Martha said to him, I know that he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day. Jesus said to her, what? I am the resurrection and life. And had this ever been said, like, we love this text, we've heard this, but literally in that moment, did she did she even hear it? Or is she still, I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes or faiths in me, not faithing in me, though he die, yet shall he live. And everyone who lives and faiths in me will never die. Do you believe this? She said to him, yes, Lord. I faith that you are the Christ, the Son of God, who is coming into the world. Verse 28, when she had said this, she went and called her sister Mary, saying in private, the teacher is here and is calling for you. And when she heard it, she rose quickly and went to him. Now Jesus had yet to come into the village, but was still in the place where Martha had met him. When the Jews who were with her in the house consoling her saw Mary rise quickly and go out, they followed her, supposing that she was going to the tomb to weep there. Now when Mary came to where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet, saying to him, okay, interesting. John, tipped our ears to Jesus will bow down or Mary will bow down and anoint his feet. Literally, that happens after this happens, where she falls at his feet. And falling at feet, I think, is not as untypical as it is today, but is more common then. But it is intriguing for that Jesus saw, and she fell at his feet, saying to him, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. She says the same thing. When Jesus saw her weeping, and here's that contagiousness beginning to happen, And what had Jesus been doing for 2 days? Praying, okay, over this whole matter. And the Jews had come with her, also weeping, contagious weeping. He was what? Deeply moved in his spirit and greatly troubled. And he said, so when a bunch of people are grieving and crying, and your authentic meter, authenticity meter is going off saying this is legit, this is a tough place to be. And he says, where have you laid him? And they said to him, Lord, come and see. And then, shortest verse in the Bible, Jesus wept. And we've learned this to mean that Jesus is human because he has emotion. But I want you to be challenged by another side of it, and that is that God is weeping. All-powerful, Son of God is weeping. What does that mean? Man of sorrows, weeping. God weeping. Not just Jesus, human weeping, but God weeping. So the Jews said, see how he loved him. But some of them said, could not he who opened the eyes of a blind man also have kept this man from dying? Not bring him back to life, but kept him from dying. Which goes back to when Martha was like, if you could get here, you could probably keep him from dying. So he could open the eyes of the blind man and he could make a sick man not die. Not bringing a dead man back to life. They don't see what's about ready to happen. Then Jesus, deeply moved again, came to the tomb. It was a cave and the stone lay against it. Jesus said, take away the stone. What's Martha's thought? Always thinking about everything. Order. Her thought is, Martha, the sister of the dead man, said to him, Lord, by this time there will be a what? An odor. He's been in there for 4 days. No embalming fluid. Here's an interesting story somebody told me recently that made me think about embalming. And it's kind of a rare situation, but it does make you think. And I'm fascinated by this stuff in a really weird way, I realize, and so I acknowledge that you probably aren't. But the story was shared with me that somebody had to prove that he was of genetic lineage to someone of an elder, like a father or a grandfather, and the only way to do it was exhume the body and get the DNA. And the body of this person was a father, or I think it was a father who died in his 30s or 40s. The son is now 50. Okay? So let's just say it's the father-son. The son has to exhume the body of his father who died at a younger age than he is at this point. You see where I'm at? They open the grave, and imagine what that would have been like. Not that this is your father, but that your father what? Looks like you did 10 years ago. You see how weird that would be? So the guy who's telling the story is his reason for not embalming. Because he was blown away by how realistic the body still looked. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't be embalmed. I mean, I'm interested in this stuff. I'm not trying to question any of that. It is what it is. I have my thoughts, but I mean, embalming's been going on for a long time, but I never really thought about it. And that's such a rare situation. It's not a reason not to do it, but it does make you think, okay? But anyway, if you don't have embalming fluid, what happens? The body starts to, rigor sets in really quick. Jesus said to her, did I not tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God? Or if you trusted me, you would see the glory of God. So they took away the stone. So I didn't catch on to this, but Why a stone? My thought has always been the stone is what? To keep people from coming and going. Is my thought, right? The practical purpose of the stone. To make it hard for somebody to what? Enter quickly and steal or whatever and disturb. But what was also done with the stone to put it in it? Seal it. Why did they seal it? Because of the deterioration of the body. And what would happen if you didn't seal it? Yeah, I think it'd be like walking past the sewer, right? So you're kind of containing it. So what happens with your nose? What happens when the stone of Lazarus' tomb is rolled away? Or what does not happen? Perhaps. There's no smell. And I was like, huh. So whether this is true or not, we don't know. But if Lazarus' body never decayed and stunk, or maybe it did, so maybe there is a residual smell. But the whole thought that I gathered from what I was reading is that the audience, the people moving the stone already knew what? Because there was no stench. They already knew something was going on. Okay? Jesus lifted, and I always picture Mary and Martha like half a mile away, because in the depictions of Lazarus walking out like a mummy, right? You to get the whole vantage point, the camera person's got to be far away to get that. But were Mary and Martha, Jesus right there? I would think, yeah, but we don't know. The bottom line is, I don't think there's a giant gap of space when this happens. I think it's probably much closer. And we picture the space of, a field in the Midwest, and I mean, that just isn't reality. So I think proximity is probably far closer. So, and does this matter? No. Do we know for sure? No, but it does. The fact that it does evoke senses and understanding of what's going on. There's no smell. And Jesus lifted up his eyes and said, Father, I thank you that you've heard me. So is this basically Jesus saying, there's no smell, I can now give thanks? Because something has yet to happen. Lazarus doesn't come walking out yet. But he lifts up his eyes and he says, Father, I thank you that you've heard me. There's no smell. I knew, and he wasn't praying that there would, well, he may have been praying that the body wouldn't decompose. I don't think it was make there be no smell when I take his dead body out. No, make his body not decompose so the resurrection will be seen.
I got a question.
Yeah.
In a cave or in a hewn out rock or whatever, it's cold in there.
Yeah, yeah.
So your body doesn't decay as quickly as if it was in heated or not heated.
Yeah. So I think that's a great insight, and I love it. But I think I can kind of remind you that this isn't Minnesota, and that's not the root cellar. But no. I think it's really important, though, and I think it's a good insight. It's also the ancient Near East. So I don't think you get to go down 6 feet and you got that whatever, that temperature that the ground is 6 feet down. Does anyone know what it is all the time? Doesn't the ground temperature, once you get so far down, kind of just never really change much?
Oh, it does.
It does?
It does.
Okay.
Actually, sometimes when you talk to one of these guys that dig a grave,
Yep.
ask them how deep the frost goes.
Yep.
The frost goes sometimes according to what the weather is.
Right. No, and I'm saying beyond the frost. Like when you get so far down.
I don't know what you consider beyond the frost.
Yeah, so the bottom line is they don't ice fish in Bethany, okay? It is a warmer temperature, and it's hard for us to fathom. Yeah, but I think it's a good insight, and at the end of the day, yeah, but yeah, it is probably cooler. But they put bodies in caves so that they would decompose after a time. So the body, a lot of times, if I remember this right, the body's laid out on a table to decompose, and over time, the grave person that takes care of this takes those parts of takes that body as it decomposes, and I mean we're 70% water, and I think it goes into a bone box, and then so the person gets put on the shelf. The ancestor goes on the shelf. Yeah, it's crazy. And then why did everyone always, here's a question I would have, did everyone get buried in a cave, or did some people could they not afford it? So how many caves did you need?
Well, they had the catacombs. I don't know if that was after or.
I think that's after.
Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, that's a great thought, B. Like, dig into it, find out. But was there a reason he was afforded a cave? Did everyone get a cave? And was there more than one person in the cave? I don't know. Fun stuff, right? Oh, maybe not, but it is to me. I knew that you always hear me, or Father, I thank you. I know that you always hear me, but I said this on account of the people standing around, that they may believe that you sent me. When he had said these things, he cried out in a loud voice, okay? Lazarus, come out! The man who had died came out. John is making a point of saying, this isn't somebody else that came out, or a different Lazarus. He's saying the man who died came out. His hands and feet bound with linen strips, and his face wrapped with a cloth. Jesus said to him, unbind him, and said to them, unbind him and let him go. Let's say that, you're there. What is Lazarus? Do you just immediately say, well, how's the weather been, Lazarus? You just don't talk the typical, yeah, I saw so-and-so won last night. That was a good game. It's just going to be jaw-dropping, staring at each other. Lazarus begins, what was it like? Awe, filled with awe, and everyone else is filled with awe as they watch a group filled with awe. Be with awe and unpack awe. And not to mention bittersweet, just moments prior, weeping, sadness, grief for the last 4 days. Emotional roller coaster, you might say.
They'd be shocked, they'd be somewhat shocked too.
Yeah.
Come out and
Yeah.
come on that way to get up, what's in your mind?
Yeah.
Wrapped up, bound up, how you gonna stand up here? But
Yeah.
with Jesus, anything is possible.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and just so you know, and we're going to go over time because the best is, in my mind, yet to come in this chapter that I didn't really see coming. Because I always hear the Lazarus story in the context of, Lent. But you have to put this story in the midst of, he just talked about being the shepherd that lays his life down for the sheep. John's putting this together, but we picture everyone being on board with Jesus bringing Lazarus back to life. Who would not be on board with this? And we're going to find out that not everyone was. Verse 45, many of the Jews, therefore, who had come with Mary and had seen what he did, believed in him, faithed in him, trusted in him. But some of them went to the Pharisees and told them what Jesus had done. Why? I'm not going to give you the answer, but you have to ask yourself, why? Why did they go? What was so concerning about this matter? I'll have to help you unpack it because it was unpacked for me. So the chief priests and the Pharisees gathered the council and said, what are we to do? For this man performs many signs. If we let him go on like this, everyone will faith in him. And who? The only time that word is used in all 4 Gospels is right here. The only time. So circle it. So here's the reason why. Here is the concern. If we let him go on like this, everyone will believe in him, it's not so much, there's not so much wrong with that, but it's connected to something that is more concerning for the council. The Romans will come and take away both our place and our nation. Okay, so here's some history. For the last 100 years, Rome has occupied the Middle East. It is the superpower. The Roman Empire has been around for 100 years. And what have the Romans done for the Jews? They've allowed them to have semi-freedom. Basically, we'll let you pretend that you're in charge. And why did the Jews want to protect Jerusalem? The temple. They don't believe that your body is a temple and that the Holy Spirit dwells in us, and it doesn't matter the physical structure. Even if you spent how much, Jim, on this building in 1967? 400 what? 30? 403,000. It doesn't matter if you spent that on the building. The Christian faith is all about the presence of God in the sacrament, the dwelling of the Spirit inside each of us, baptismal faith. And so for the Jews, the Pharisees, they had already lost the temple once, and it was being rebuilt. And it was pretty much in the time of Jesus, I think it had come to completion. So in a sense, think 1972, this church has been here 4 years. Pretty proud of it, right? Pretty protective of it. Even those of you who were here for the building love this building. I've seen it. I know how people are that put sweat into this building and money into this church for the blessings. You know what I mean? I'm just saying that was what's going on for the Pharisees and the council. They don't want to lose this semi-freedom they have from the Roman Empire. What will they lose? They'll lose all freedom. And what I also didn't know, and I didn't look into further, is that do you think Jesus is the first person ever to be crucified? No. It's my understanding, and I didn't look into this, but what I read was that a lot of revolutions in the 100 years prior to this event, a lot of revolutions came out of Galilee. And how were they dealt with? From what I read, the Romans crucified all the rebels. They didn't crucify the leader of the rebels. Every rebel was crucified. Are you afraid of the Romans?
Yeah.
Because crucifixion is the most humiliating, drawn out way of killing a human being in the history of the world. The most humiliating, the most drawn out. To be crucified was humiliating. You were put on a cross naked, humiliating. You didn't die a quick death, but you had to struggle with the breath and not die. And just, it's awful, gruesome. And this is part of what's on the minds of the Pharisees, is that they're afraid of the Roman Empire and they don't want to lose. They just put all this time into the temple, and the Romans have allowed them to have the semi-freedom, at least have the building, because we can't have the land back. Okay? 49, but one of them, Caiaphas, who was high priest that year, said to them, "You know nothing at all, nor do we understand that it is better for you that one man should die for the people, not for the whole nation, that the whole nation should perish." Okay, verse 48, I'm going backwards, read this again. "If we let him go out like this, everyone will believe in him, and the Romans will come and take away both our place and our nation." But one of them, Caiaphas, the high priest that year, said to them, "You know nothing at all, Nor do you understand that it is better for you that one man should die for the people, not for the whole that the whole nation should perish. So what is Caiaphas saying?
Well, let's kill that one man instead of all of us be killed.
Exactly. It is better for one man to die to be the sacrifice for keeping the nation even in its semi-freedom than for the whole nation to die. So Caiaphas thinks Jesus needs to die. But guess what? There's a double meaning here, right? That one man dies not for the Jewish nation,
Jesus died for the whole world.
the whole world, which the chapter prior reminds us that there's sheep from other flocks, that he is the shepherd too. Yeah, so verse 50, 51, he did not say this on his own accord, but being high priest that year, he prophesied that Jesus would die for the nation. And not for the nation only, but also to gather into one the children of God who are scattered abroad. Maybe he saw the fact if Jesus dies, it will bring all his followers back to one nation. I don't know how to unpack this much. So verse 53, so from that day on, they made plans to put him to death. Okay, we know this story, but it is said here, the plan from here on out is what? To put him to death. Why? Not just because he irritates them, but now for the sake of the nation of Israel or the Jews, this is to happen. Verse 54, Jesus therefore no longer walked openly among the Jews, which he had just prior in this chapter talked about going when it's daylight, right? Interestingly, huh? So now he's no longer walking openly among the Jews, but went from there. So he is going into stealth mode, you might say. But went from there to the region near the wilderness to a town called Ephraim, which I believe is 15 miles out, not just nearby 2 miles out, but now 15 miles out. Think about walking 15 miles. How far can you get in? How long would it take to walk 15 miles? 3 miles an hour, right? Is typical gait. So 5 hours, a 5-hour journey away. So what's 5 hours away? 5 hours. No. Rochester? Huh? Yeah, well, I'm just trying to picture what is a 5-mile journey or 5-hour journey for us. That's how far away Jesus is. We're not talking miles. We're talking about time spent to get to a place.
From here to Iowa line.
That's actually 4, unless you're going across.
From here to Rochester, that's about a 4 or 5 hour drive.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's something most of us have done. So let's just leave it south of Rochester somewhere, okay? So a 5-hour, that's how far away he is compared to a 2-mile journey, which would be Browerville, right? How far away is Browerville from here?
8 miles.
Oh, what's 2 miles then? Round Prairie. Yes. The Durheims. No, you're further in.
8 miles.
8 miles. Dang, what's 2 miles away? No?
Out to the corn place on the highway.
Oh, Prairie Lakes.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah, I like it.
That's about 2 miles.
So Lazarus is raised from the dead at Prairie Lakes, and Jesus. I got this all mixed up in my head now. Forget it. Because that's not fair. It's actually 2 miles would be 2 hours away. That'd be St. Cloud. No, that would be the cities. Oh man. Oh, this is just getting messy. Yeah, let's just back up, pretend we didn't have this conversation. 54, therefore no longer walked among the Jews, but went from there to the region near the wilderness to the town of Ephraim, 15 miles out, and stayed there with the disciples. And verse 55 tells us what's going on. Now the Passover of the Jews was at hand. What time of the year is it? Spring. Yep. We were in the fall. Wasn't it last week we were in Hanukkah and Judas Maccabeus? Which Hanukkah just started yesterday, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So now it's at Passover. 6 months have passed in a sense. Now Passover of the Jews was at hand, and many went up from the country to Jerusalem before the Passover to purify themselves. Okay, so a lot of people are going the other way. Jesus is going almost against the flow. Yeah. They were looking for Jesus and saying to one another as they stood in the temple, "What do you think? That he will not come to the feast at all?" Now the chief priests and the Pharisees had given orders that if anyone knew where he was, they should let him know so that they might arrest him. So we always hear about who lets Caiaphas and company know where Jesus is at. No, but who is the Judas, right? So what I'm saying is that when I think about who told them where Jesus was at, it was Judas. But what this text is doing for me is teaching me that there already was a desire and basically almost a reward out there if you had information where this Jesus was at. And so Judas wasn't like ticked off at one point or seeking the money, but basically they were looking. There was a missing photo out for Jesus. It became well aware. Does that change for you like it does for me? Maybe I'm not even getting this in the right words, but there is more here than just Judas goes and tells them. Obviously that happens, but this is bringing to light that the Pharisees want to kill him, and they have a plan to go get him. And they can't get him, so what do? They say, if anyone knows where he's at, you let us know. Now the chief priests and the Pharisees had given orders that if anyone knew where he was, he should let them know so that they might arrest him. Also wanted to make note of this, that talking about the Romans, in Syria, which isn't too far away, there's legions. Basically, the Roman army is camped there. So it's not like Jerusalem is just like has a gentleman's handshake that like, hey, we're good, you can trust us. But there is literally legions, thousands of military in the Roman Empire encamped not too far away. And if there's a problem, A, you're going to lose your semi-freedom that you think you already have. But B, it's going to be ugly, and past events had showed this, but that was always there. It was kind of like a missile crisis. The missile could fire at at the drop of a hat. And so anyway, they are there. They're just not in the small villages that we hear about in the scriptures. So the Roman Empire is really behind the Jewish anxiety or the council's anxiety. The people that are trying to protect Jerusalem, their anxiety is fueled it is stretched thin because of the Roman Empire and the ability to crush them just like that. And the evidence in their life memory of seeing many rebels already crucified. And maybe having been dealt you let this happen one more time, you're done. Okay? So it's all amplified. And that's I think that's all. Yes.
This can happen at any time, but I lived with a spy for 6 months in Korea. You just don't know this stuff. They're smart. You think you're smart, but they're smart.
Yeah.
And
So those 6.
we don't have to be afraid because we have Jesus.
Right. Right. Yeah. Interesting. Great. Interesting. Anybody else? Anybody want to share what they experienced from the person they picked? from Mary, Martha, Lazarus, Jesus? Any insights?
Well, they didn't have TV, communications, cars, they didn't have anything but themselves.
Yeah.
And a few miles meant a lot to them.
Yep.
You know, this whole thing, let's go back to start with Martha washing, pointing Jesus, drying his feet with her hair. Look back to when Christ went into church for communion to the disciples,
Yep.
what he did there. Bringing Lazarus out of the grave, Christ came out of there. Mary and Martha were the ones that there and found him after he came out.
Yep.
It's like a forceful taking back. This is already foretelling us what is already coming to happen.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, you're right. And I think you really have to just kind of allow John to tell a story and kind of forget about what you learned in the Christian faith the more, to appreciate that, to realize, or just to appreciate the events as they unfold without all the doctrine and teaching you have. And I'm not saying get rid of that. I'm just saying, but listen to how the events play out and not the doctrine for a moment. And it's really hard to do. And again, that's the importance of giving you these booklets, is to remind ourselves that this is a story written by John, an account. The story the story can lead to the thought that maybe it's fiction. So the account is a way to say this is an account of John to tell the story of Jesus. Okay, and that's why we're reading it, to learn the story of Jesus through the eyes, through the lens of John. So this is John. So the story of Jesus is what it looks like. And this is the story of Mark, okay? They're all different lenses of how the story of Jesus takes place. All right, this went over way more than usual. I apologize for that, but it was a longer chapter, but filled with so much. Let us pray. Father in heaven, thank you for your blessings that you've given to us each and every day, specifically today. We ask that you be on our hearts. Continue to inspire us, to move us, to challenge us, to stretch us, to be with us amidst the good, but also help us to learn in the midst of the painful, in the midst of the grief. Lord, we thank you that no matter what, you've promised to dwell with us, and we need not fear death, but we have this tremendous faith and hope in the blessings that you bring to us now that we're a part of your family. As a part of your family, bless us in our actions with others who may not be from your family, and yet others who also are a part of your family, but we don't always agree with. Lord, help our actions, our thoughts, our minds, even our hearts, to be open to forgiveness and to be open to insight. Lord, for these things we thank you and pray in Jesus' most precious name. Amen. All right.